Hello, my name's Sean and you're listening to the Film Focus podcast. Today we are going to be talking about 2 or 3 films. Some of them you may have seen, some of them you may not have seen. I haven't seen one of the films we're going to be talking about. Anyway, I'm joined by Matthew.
Hi.
Ben.
Hello.
And for the first time ever, a special guest, Abel.
Hi guys and girls.
Alright, so Matthew and Abel, you had a film you wanted to start off
this was a film I kind of just stumbled into on Netflix and I just randomly watched one day and I recommended it to Abel, called Ravenous. Well, that's the English translation. It is like French, but that's saying what?
Le Ravenous
or something. Yeah. And it's a French-Canadian zombie film, like quite small budget, I would say. Seems like it. And I quite liked it. I was saying earlier that I think the thing that makes it kind of interesting and stand out is it's set in a very small kind of rural village. It's very quiet. A lot of the time it's like just these characters kind of walking around and you occasionally get like zombies.
And there's barely like any soundtrack. You can just hear like the occasional scream and stuff. Yeah,
it's quite. It has its like. I'd recommend it because there's so many zombie movies out there.
That's what I was gonna say. Does it stand apart?
There's
so many.
I would say that it has its like. It has its own like. It feels unique.
I'd say it's like the only sort of indie zombie film that I know, like indie sort of art house.
Yeah.
Art house.
Yeah. I'd say it looks quite art housey.
It's definitely artsy. It's like a lot of it isn't like on like running away from zombies or anything.
Yeah,
like, it's just them like talking,
people bonding.
characters talking, and then occasionally, obviously, you get zombies.
Which is a bit like 28 Days Later as well, I guess. It's
actually, it reminded me of a bit of like the beginning to 28 Weeks Later. You know where they're
in the best bit of 28 Weeks Later.
Yeah, definitely.
The best bit.
I've only seen
probably the only bit worth watching. It's like the first 5 minutes. Actually, no, it's an okay.
But the first 10 minutes are
like,
really
absolute.
It drops off dramatically compared to that because that's a really great.
Like the intro is 10 out of 10.
I just wish Begbie kept his Scottish accent.
Begbie.
Robert Carlyle. Yeah. But I thought Ravenous was good. I don't know about Abel, but I think that among the sea of zombie movies, it has its kind of.
It's good
more interesting.
When gems like that appear, like Train to Busan.
Train to Busan is a wicked film.
Is that another
do you know that one, Sean?
Zombie one?
It's a Korean zombie film.
No,
it's basically
sounds cool though.
It's set mostly on a train, which sets things.
Sounds like Zombie Snowpiercer or something.
It is
and
like
I love
Snowpiercer,
so
which is also Korean, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's class commentary, which Train to Busan.
Yeah, you were saying that there's like the second you watched them in like the same week.
I did, yeah.
Like the second Korean class,
train-based Korean, like dystopian
guess it's
class
a popular
Korean
thing. I don't know.
The thing about both Ravenous and Train to Busan is they're not stories about heroes, they're stories about real people who get caught up in this.
Yes.
All the characters make sort of realistic
and like especially in like Train to Busan, some of them are just like assholes. No, I would recommend Ravenous.
What would you give it out of 5?
It's been a while. I'd say over 3 stars, like pretty decent.
Yeah.
Hard to give it a number, but
I'd give it a 3.6.
How recent is it? I don't know.
It's fairly recent. It's like the last couple of years. Yeah.
Okay.
I think maybe like
2017.
2017.
I think.
Yeah, it's pretty recent. Yeah.
I think I remember it being advertised when it first went on Netflix. Like it is ringing a bell.
Yeah, zombie films is kind of a dying genre.
They had it kind of peaked and then they went
out
of favour.
2000s
I think
it peaked.
The invention of running zombies reinvigorated it.
Yeah.
Because you had 28 Days Later and the remake of Dawn of the Dead.
Is that good?
I didn't see it.
It's alright. It's
Alright,
decent. But the original is one of my favourite films.
I've only ever seen the original Night of Living Dead, and I really like that one. So.
Yeah, I do love the George Romero films. But the invention of running zombies sort of brought things back. And then I guess a lot of video games.
Yeah, it's that.
Feels like it's gone off a bit from then. Like
zombie films.
The only recent zombie film I can think of is like the Zombieland sequel.
Zombieland? Running zombies as well, yeah.
But I heard the sequel isn't that great.
I don't know about the second one. I don't think any of us have
maybe
seen
we'll watch it. I don't know if I'll watch that.
When's it even out? Is it?
It's out, yeah, it came out.
Yeah.
Is it out?
Yeah, it came out like 2 weeks ago.
I really liked the first one, so I'd be willing to. I'd
never
give
seen
the second
either
one
of
a
them.
go.
I thought you had.
Yeah.
You should definitely watch the first one.
Oh yeah, people like the first
It's a
one.
fun film.
And it's like a good. It's one of those films that's like comedy, but also a good zombie movie. Like
it works as both.
Works.
It's not completely silly,
so
it's still a comedy.
Anyway, the main thing we're all here today to talk about is a film we literally just saw.
Fresh out the grease.
Yeah, fresh in our minds. Whether that's for better or worse, I don't know. Dr. Sleep, which was directed by Mike Flanagan, and it's obviously based on Stephen King's book Dr. Sleep, which is a sequel to his book The Shining. But then this film is also a sequel to the film of The Shining, which is different to the book. So it's a little bit complicated.
A heavy homage to the Stanley Kubrick original. I don't know how it compares to either of the books.
Yeah, I think I tried to read the book of The Shining once after I'd seen the film, and I was kind of bored of it. So
how far did you get? They made it to the hotel.
No, they actually hadn't. So
just the drive.
Yeah.
That's like
in The Haunting of Hill House, the book, they don't get to the house until a third of the way through the book.
Yeah, no,
so
in
you
the
joke, but
the book of The Shining, I remember them not being in the hotel for quite a while, and I just kind of gave up on it.
But it's fair to say that Dr. Sleep is like the film at least is like feels like an actual Shining sequel.
To the,
like
to the film,
it doesn't just reference it like it directly.
Oh no, we'll start off spoiler free, but yeah, as we get further into it, we'll talk about some things that are along those lines. So let's go around and give our overall thoughts of it. My opinion is it was okay. It was about what I expected, because I hadn't delved into any reviews, but I'd kind of seen the scores it was getting on like Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, which were kind of mixed. So I kind of expected to not hate it probably, but I thought maybe I'd get something out of it that other people didn't, or I'd think it would be, my expectations would be, because they were low, I'd enjoy it more. I probably enjoyed it about what I would have thought how I would have enjoyed it. It was a fine film. Mike Flanagan did a pretty good job direction wise. The editing was pretty good. The lighting and how it looked was all fine. But it doesn't compare to the original, is my opinion. I don't know what you guys thought, but
yeah, I thought fairly similar. Like it was like decent. I was I wasn't going in like with I did enjoy it for what it was. Like I thought it was decently made. We kind of, I think we all agreed that it wasn't particularly scary. I think maybe it could have done with a bit more horror. Like a bit. There were a couple of kind of little jumps and stuff, but there weren't any sequences that were like properly scary.
An interesting quote I just looked at before we started recording was that Mike Flanagan said he was trying to avoid using jump scares, but I disagree with that, because that was the main horror aspect of the film.
Yeah.
So
if it weren't for the jump scares, there wouldn't really have been any fright.
I thought that was a bit cheap.
But I did enjoy it for what it was. You know, it wasn't like excellent. It wasn't like a really good horror movie, but it was pretty well directed, I thought, and enjoyable enough to. And I'm sure that people who like Stephen King will enjoy it.
I guess so. Yeah. Ben, what did you?
I thought it was basically fine. I agree with you. It looked nice, well directed, well shot.
Acting's alright. Yeah, it's boring though.
Yeah.
It's a little slow.
I think I was saying.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's okay, which I think is a bad thing for a 2.5 hour film to be. It is a fairly slow-paced 2.5 hours, which I don't think are necessarily put to the best use.
No.
In a long film like that, a long supposed horror film, I would like to have seen more tension.
Yeah, something like another film that came out this year did that a lot better. Midsommar is long, but it's like a very good horror. So
yeah, I think Midsommar makes better use of its runtime.
Yeah, exactly.
Than this. I'm not really sure where the runtime went on this, if I'm honest, because I don't even feel particularly strongly about the characters.
I think it could have been like half an hour shorter.
Yeah,
maybe even shorter. Than
so
that,
I thought it was okay.
Abel, what did you think? Like,
well, I mean, I went into it looking at Rotten Tomatoes and seeing 73% from the reviewers and maybe from the critics even.
Okay.
Maybe I dug myself a bit of a grave, but even still, I thought it was really bad.
That's fair enough.
I could be playing devil's advocate, but
no, I don't think you are, because if your expectations were that high, I probably would be in your position.
And, like, I probably went in thinking, okay, this could be like really good runoff of Stanley Kubrick's work, which, as we just said, was in its own ballpark.
Yeah.
But I thought bits of it was silly, bits of it were unneeded, but we'll get into that.
I think now is just a good time to.
The thing to remember with Rotten Tomatoes is it's a percentage of how many critics gave it a positive review.
Yeah, true.
Okay.
So that means 73% of critics thought it was better than okay.
Because I only really looked at the Metacritic ones, which actually I think gets the score and like averages it out.
See, I didn't know that was was how Rotten
what did
Tomatoes.
Metacritic give it?
And that's the only ones I
Rotten
saw,
Tomatoes.
so it was pretty average reviews on Metacritic. So I thought, I mean, that's what I was expecting, and that is what I got essentially. But
Having said that, I would say 73 is like a 7 out of 10. I would say that's, for me, that's reasonable. I would say like it's a 7 out of 10, no more than that.
I'd give it even a 7 out of 10.
No, I'd say 6 would be the highest I'd give it, and even that I feel is maybe too generous. But
I feel
don't
you're
know.
giving it less.
Yeah, well, I'd maybe give it a
3 stars out of 5, so 6 out of 10 for me. I'd say I'd say that's
if we had to put a number
That's
on
an
it.
okay, I would
yeah,
say.
it's definitely better
That's
than okay.
because having said, I wasn't that impressed, but I never felt like walking out in a 2.5 hours. I never felt like, oh, I want this to end.
So if anyone from Metacritic's listening, whack that on there, fucking 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10.
From the Film Focus podcast. But anyway, I think now's as good a time as any to go into spoilers, because it's hard to talk about this film without spoilers.
If you want to get into detail,
Yeah, because it's a sequel to The Shining, and like we have to spoil that as well if no one's.
I mean, if you
seen
haven't
it.
seen The Shining,
Like grow up.
The film is heavily dependent on you having on audiences having seen the Shining, I would say.
I guess piggybacking off that a bit, like it does that, but then it also tries to be something different.
Yes.
But then at the same time, it like
which it didn't commit to either.
It didn't commit to either, so it's.
I would have liked it more if it was completely its own thing.
Yeah.
Not completely its own thing. Have it about Danny Torrance.
Yeah.
Don't lean back into The Shining as much as it did, and I think I would have liked it more.
They should have gone in one direction or the other. Your direction sounds the best version of that.
Right to Mike Flanagan. Right to Stephen King.
Other than,
Well, yeah, that's
like,
the thing.
I think it would be a lot worse if it was like a soft reboot sort of thing of adult Danny taking his family to look after a hotel.
well, you prefer that?
No, that'd be awful.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's what I mean. Make it its own thing.
It'd be bad, but like they could have gone down, like really down, like the nostalgia train.
Yeah, I was actually glad with how. Well,
are we in spoilers?
I think
we are in
spoilers.
Spoiler territory.
There's a lot of that.
But I was glad. Like I thought they just about got away with it. I would have liked maybe a bit less, but
I would say less.
I was glad that they didn't do more than they did, because for the first 2/3 of the film, at least, there's not that much.
Yes, and I like that.
It's towards the end. There's a lot more.
Stuff.
Yeah.
And then you get a big chunk.
What?
It reminded me actually of the inverse of Evil Dead 2. Sean, I know you.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's very similar to the first one.
So the beginning of Evil Dead 2 is a condensed remake of the first one because Sam Raimi didn't have the rights to the footage, I think, to do an actual recap of the first film. So to bring the audience up to speed, he just the first 10 minutes of Evil Dead 2, like the entirety of Evil Dead 1.
Yes.
And to me, that's what Dr. Sleep feels like. It feels like the ending is a condensed remake.
It is.
Yeah, definitely.
It was a little too similar.
They did flashbacks, but they just remade the exact same thing, and it's like, why wouldn't they? Surely they just have the rights to show footage from.
I'm quite happy with them doing that though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it
just looked weird to me.
Are we referring to the fake Jack Nicholson?
I am. I'm not necessarily referring to the gold room scene. I'm referring to like there's a bit where I don't know, someone sees like all of Danny's memories, and it's like Jack Nicholson walking up the stairs with like the axe, but it's like fake Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
And
okay. See, that was the thing. I didn't understand. If you're gonna show so little of Jack Nicholson, let's say Jack Torrance. Yeah. If you're gonna show so little, I don't understand why they wouldn't use the footage.
Because surely Warner Brothers has the right.
Yeah.
They were. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm perfectly fine with it being a standalone. The way they reshoot the scenes.
It took me out a bit because I thought the guy didn't look that much like Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, he didn't. Apart from the hair, he didn't really look...
I thought in the gold room scene, to let our audience know what we're talking about, there's a scene where... Well, you would have seen the film anyway. Jack Nicholson's character appears as the Lloyd Waiter character in the gold room when older Danny goes to the gold room. And, like, the way it's shot is from the side, so it's less noticeable that it's not Jack Nicholson. I thought it was still noticeable, but,
Yeah, that kind of worked for me because it's kind of ambiguous as to is it combination of his memories, like it's like the barman but kind of fused with his dad. But it was that point at which, like you said, when they literally recreated the stairs shot with that actor, that for me was like, oh, why would you do that? Like, why wouldn't you just show a quick shot of Nicholson?
Yeah, because that would have been better in my opinion. But I know that's a very small.
But having said that, that actually scene where he's at the bar was actually one of the better scenes of the film. I thought I quite liked that. His just kind of interaction.
I did like how they. I literally watched The Shining yesterday, so it did look like literally exactly the same as the Gold Room did in the Kubrick version. I guess it's impressive. I don't know, but it was a good scene. Yeah, I agree with that.
Something that sort of ruins the film for me is Danny explaining his Tony situation. So if you haven't seen The Shining, Danny has this...
So the groundskeeper guy. The
guy. So the groundskeeper guy explains to Danny that he's got this thing called The Shining, which comes in the form of this voice called Tony. And in this Dr. Sleep, Danny explains what Tony is. And I think they should have kept it mysterious. In fact, I think they should have sort of made a reference. Maybe he could have wriggled his finger.
I forgot.
Going off of that, like I thought the plot was the weakest aspect of this film. The Shining is a very ambiguous film. Yeah. It's all about like the psychology of like Jack Torrance and like Danny.
And the ending doesn't explain anything.
No, this film, especially the like first 2/3 of it, is like seems like they're just explaining all the shit that happened in The Shining.
There's a lot of exposition of
what The Shining is or The Shine is. And
they don't go full on midichlorians.
No,
but it's comparable.
It's like, did anyone ask for this?
It's a lot less mysterious.
Well, part of what makes The Shining good is that ambiguity. Because everything's just so odd.
I was literally thinking when I finished watching it yesterday, like, you know, at the end it like zooms in on Jack Torrance, like in that photograph. It's like, what the fuck is that? But it makes the film. It makes the film more interesting because. You don't know what's real in that film.
Exactly. So I don't think Dr. Sleep retroactively makes The Shining any worse or less enjoyment of it. But it is strange to hear supernatural, ambiguous atmosphere of The Shining being described in such plain exposition. Way. Yes, it feels...
He literally talks to Abra about it and there's no sort of atmosphere at all. Exactly, aren't they standing in a park and he's telling, so this is what I have.
And because they say that thing about the Overlook like feeds off of people with The Shining.
Yeah.
They never really say that in. Correct me if I'm wrong. They never mention anything like that.
You don't know what's going on.
You don't know why.
I never thought of the people as simple sort of ghosts, which is what they are in this, and I suppose it's what they are in the original. But I never thought of them in such plain terms.
I mean, all we know in The Shining is about the ghosts in the hotel is that it's built on an Indian burial ground. Yeah. That's all that's explained.
And it seems to be that the spirits or ghosts or whatever are people who were once
there. The one detail you are aware of in The Shining is like when Jack Torrance is having the interview and he's told about like the murder that went on with
the two girls.
Something Grady.
The character which you see is like the waiter character who spills stuff on Jack and then he cleans him off in the toilet and then he like says you've got to like correct your family, which means like kill them.
Yeah.
That's the only detail I guess and the burial ground that you're ever is like confirmed in The Shining, and that's all at the start before Jack Torrance has like gone insane. And
there's not really any rules in The Shining. It's just the shit. Like
that's it. Yeah. That's what I've been trying to articulate. It applies rules to The Shining, which has no rules.
The rules in The Shining are weird stuff happens because you're on an Indian burial.
I kind of feel like
it might not even be that. Maybe. It's not like that's the
no. It's just like it's up to
rules.
Interpretation. Whereas this
has clearly defined rules, which work sometimes in films. But
I kind of. Do you think it was maybe like because I guess you're all aware Stephen King originally didn't like the film of The Shining.
Yeah.
He wasn't happy because Kubrick obviously went in his own direction, like he
as he always does.
Yeah, as he always does. But King wasn't happy about that. Do you reckon he wrote Dr. Sleep just because he was kind of pissed off about that?
No, because Dr. Sleep came out a long time afterwards.
Yeah, true. He probably did like The Shining by then because he did come around.
And to be that bitter for that amount of time, it's a bit petty, isn't it?
Stanley Kubrick would have been dead as well.
I think even
take that, Kubrick.
I think Stephen King must have eventually realised that it's not entirely accurate to his book, but it's like still in a great film.
It's like a cinematic masterpiece.
Yeah, because I think the main, I haven't read any of the books, but I've heard people say the main kind of difference and the reason King didn't like it is because from the beginning of the film of The Shining, Jack Nicholson's kind of portrayed as like a creepy guy who has issues, whereas apparently in the book it's very much like he's a nice nice guy trying his best, and then when he gets to the hotel thing stuff. Whereas in the film, it's like he's
Jack Nicholson's basically he never plays the character as normal, really, does he?
From the beginning, you're like, this guy's got a bit like.
There's a lot of weird like tongue stuff, like
so I think
off about it.
So supposedly that was the main reason Stephen King didn't like the film.
Also, in The Shining, they mentioned that Jack did accidentally like beat Danny before
broke his arm or something, didn't he?
I'd forgotten about that.
Well, it's in the first gold room scene when he's talking to Lloyd the bartender, and he's like, okay, like I did maybe accidentally whack him when I was trying to.
Wasn't it when he was drunk or something?
Probably. I mean,
probably when he was drunk, but like I think it was an accident, but like he did actually like.
Yeah. Point is, he's like neglectful.
Yeah, he's neglectful, and he did whack his kid once, and then the mother. That's why she's pissed off when she finds like there's marks on Danny.
Yeah.
He like comes into the writing room at one point. So what were we talking about? We're talking about Stephen King.
And how it relates to the original. I guess.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where like they like at the same time I think it might have been better with a bit less of the kind of references to the film. I am glad that they didn't go more than they did, because like they could have gone overboard. Like it did feel like it was a bit restrained.
Yeah.
Like they didn't full on like just like do anything that was I mean they did a couple of
that's what that whole chunk felt like to me.
I mean
it really felt like just a very heavy.
Maybe it's because I was expecting it.
Shining.
Maybe it's because I was expecting.
It was kind of like it was quite a short amount of the runtime as well. So
it was only a
it's kind of like hey, you stayed till the end. Now you get fucking naked lady in the bathtub. Now you're gonna get
the twins.
The twins.
A literal scene of Danny walking through the hotel and just looking at all the locations.
See, I
it didn't feel earned to me, because the rest of the film wasn't that great, and then it's like this is why you came to see the film. The references to The Shining, and it's like it wasn't even good.
It was the more obvious stuff, like the girl saying, "Come play with us, Danny." Like that was like I didn't mind Danny just walking through and looking through and stuff, but it was like the really iconic lines and stuff when they like.
But then also the scene of Rose the Hat, the villain, when she's walking up the stairs.
Oh yes, of course. She does like
even making the gestures.
Yeah, that was a bit too far. Yeah, definitely.
And I also thought when Ewan McGregor just becomes Jack Nicholson crazy at the end was kind of dumb as well.
Oh yeah. So there's I did not like that chunk of the film.
Yeah.
Remember when they're standing in room 237 and Abra finally sort of gets the spirit of the house out of Danny.
Yeah.
And he said, and then suddenly he's like, I don't know how long I can be free, and then suddenly goes back into it. I think
that was a bit cheesy.
It was like,
they could have, and
then he gets out of it again and blows up the hotel.
Yeah.
Right? So,
spoilers, but
well, we're already in the spoilers.
But it's I don't know, like that bit in particular where he's like chasing her with an axe.
Just
like, oh come on, like we've seen
really?
it. That was like way too. Like,
and even shouting Abra in that way as well.
Yeah. Oh, it just didn't feel right. But I guess we haven't even talked about the new things. I guess we should talk about what this film did.
The good bits, in my opinion.
No,
the story starts. There's a little bit of Danny as a kid straight after The Shining. Like, he's still spooked by his past.
Yeah.
And then it shows him when he's older, when he's Obi-Wan, and he's still spooked by the past.
He's a mess.
Yeah, he's a mess. He's a drunken mess who sleeps with cokeheads.
Fights people.
He loves fighting people.
He smashes snooker balls into people's faces.
Yeah. He's a real state.
He doesn't care if he's killed them, apparently, either. So.
Well, I'm to that guy, I guess.
I don't know, because the person he sleeps with is like, oh, you might have killed him, and they just like bang. It's like, alright. But
he's a bad boy.
I guess he's what she's after.
But basically, he's washed up.
He's washed up. He's running away from.
And then he almost robs that lady. Like goes into her purse and
that bit was so unnecessary. Like,
but it wasn't unnecessary as well.
I didn't.
Well, no, because
he never does a sort of weird action like that again in the film, doesn't he?
Suddenly goes forward 8 years.
Yeah, it does jump forward.
But I think they could have explained like.
He's a mess. It did show he was a mess. I thought. I got that. But
it's just kind of to show how much of an addict he is.
Yeah.
Kind of.
And then out of the blue comes Scatman Crowthers.
Oh, what the ground
janitor groundskeeper guy.
Yeah.
Or like a guy acting him.
At first, I don't know if you guys it took me a second, because one of these rules that is applied now is that even when people with The Shining are killed, they can still
They
talk.
become ghosts.
Okay,
Force
ghosts.
Yeah. literally Obi-Wan.
Yeah. And they don't kind of touch upon that till later. So when I first saw, the janitor groundskeeper dude, I was like, I swear he got killed with an axe.
He does.
Yeah, and he does. And I was like, so I was like, I was like doubting my memory. Like, did he not get killed with an axe? But it's like shortly after they do kind of okay, he's dead, but he's still talking. But at first I was like, what?
Well, one thing I found a bit weird is like Danny and the janitor, like they're not close. Like I don't know why he's still seeing the janitor, other than the fact that he told him about The Shining, and I guess he turned up to save him, but Danny doesn't even know that because, or maybe he does because of The Shining.
I guess he came and told him afterwards.
I think only the mother sees him dead. Even it just felt a bit weird that there's suddenly like that he's like the dad figure of Danny.
I guess, but I mean the fact that he kind of introduced him to what The Shining was.
Yes, maybe I'm nitpicking.
It kind of makes sense.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Danny is his Padawan.
So basically, he kind of like said, "Oh, Danny, don't fucking steal this lady's mind. She's got a kid or whatever." He's kind of like the moral figure for Danny.
You can assume that he's there throughout his life as his conscience.
Yeah, you get that.
He keeps.
Well, no, there's a scene before that you see as Danny on a kid on like a bench, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he's speaking to him.
He's talking to him. Yeah.
I guess I glossed over mentioning that part. So yeah, you did see him before that, I guess. So he's kind of like the moral figure for Danny, and he's helping him through like his troubled life, I guess. And then Danny, he's a drifter, I guess, and he goes to a town and befriends like a dude who gets him like an apartment.
Gets him like clean.
Yeah.
Cleans him up, takes him to like a AA meeting, yeah.
And then meanwhile, like while this is happening, they kind of cut between that and the villain, who's Rose the Hat, who's the leader of this cult. I think they were called the Knot. Or
Knot.
I didn't even pick that up.
Because they're tied together.
Because they're tied together.
By steam.
Yeah. I will say, like, I actually seeing the trailers for this movie, I thought that looks a bit cheesy, but I actually quite enjoyed it. I thought Rebecca Ferguson, who plays Rose the Hat, was actually quite a good villain. I thought.
Although we were saying her accent's a bit.
Her accent was a bit weird. She couldn't sometimes she was Irish, sometimes she wasn't.
Sometimes she's English, sometimes she's American. Yeah.
But she was good, and I quite
I
actually surprisingly enjoyed the whole like cult of people.
Yeah, I did.
Sucking stuff.
Because it's completely different to the film.
It's different.
Yeah.
One thing I thought they could have expanded. Well, maybe they just didn't have enough time. Like only about 3 of the characters from that group you knew.
They were names, but
a lot of them were just expendable.
Bobby the Chunk, I think.
Was that one of them?
One of them was like
Grandpa Frick.
Grandpa
Flick.
It wasn't Frank or...
Yeah, it was a weird,
Frick
something
like
that.
Yeah, we see them recruit like a new 15-year-old.
Snakebite something.
Snakebite
Andy.
They all have weird names, basically.
They all seem to be assigned by Rose the Hat, so I guess you just have to take what you give them.
She was
I feel sorry for Bobby the Chunk.
Snakebite Andy or whatever. She was one of the ones that they did expand upon, and she had a character at least. A lot of them were just in the background, like dicking about.
She has the Shining, but her Shining powers. It gets kind of X-Men because her Shining
she's
powers
Professor X.
manifest differently to Danny's. Danny has telepathy.
Yeah.
Snakebite Andy can do mind control, and that's how her Shining manifests.
And then Abra is just
Abra.
Yeah, it's like
telekinetic and
kind of
psychic.
Do everything, can't she?
Abra can do anything.
You can
the prodigal child.
But Rose the Hat can still do quite a lot of stuff, can't she?
Yeah, because she thinks she's the most powerful.
But only when she's absolutely steaming.
Oh yeah.
So they suck the life force out of people with the Shining,
which they call steam.
And they put it in canisters and they like store it for when they want like a hit of like shining steam.
Yeah, a little high, yeah.
And I liked all that.
Yeah, I thought it was quite good.
It was fine, yeah.
I liked all that because I want to differentiate this to not sound like a hypocrite. When I was complaining about the rules, that was the rules given to the Overlook Hotel.
Yeah.
Whereas I like this new mythology. Okay. I actually like them expanding on this aspect of things rather than the ghosts and the ghosts logic of The Shining. I think everything with steam is basically okay.
I agree with kind of what Abel was saying earlier, where like it does kind of take away some of the mystery of just like
this is what The Shining specifically is.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I didn't mind there's these new group of people or whatever. That was fine, but I guess the rule was kind of. Yeah. I wish that was more ambiguous.
Because I mean, in the original film, I think that as far as I know, I mean, you watched it really recently, but I swear the only thing that they say The Shining is that they can like speak to each other through the
Yeah, because the janitor, that's the only power you're aware the
They
janitor
never show
can
them
do.
being able to, like,
And then that's the thing, The Shining, to me, always felt like the most out-of-place aspect of The Shining. Do you see what I mean?
It's not really relevant to the original story.
No, it's like a haunted house film with strange supernatural goings-on.
Yeah. The only part of that film where it comes into use is like where he
when he
contacts the
janitor guy.
Dick is his name.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
Oh right, okay.
And he's like freaking out in his bed, and he's like,
because that's true. Like apart from that, it's not relevant. Like to what?
I guess it does. It kind of makes.
It's relevant now.
Yeah.
The film makes it relevant.
Well, no. I was gonna say also the parents they know something weird's wrong with their son, and they want to take him to a doctor. So I guess it is kind of relevant to the psychological.
They know
what
he's
the
odd.
fuck's going on.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say it's completely irrelevant because Danny is a weird kid, and
but
like
it's
his
not the
parents
focus,
are aware
is
of
it?
that.
Like,
No, it's not the focus. Like I agree. That, but
the film, I'll have to, like, so Sean, in Doctor Sleep, it's made clear that the Overlook Hotel responds to Danny because he has the Shining. Can that be interpreted from the original film, which I haven't seen in a long time?
No, because Jack Torrance sees shit.
That's the
well.
thing. It's all all based around Jack in the Shining.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe there are clues that Danny's the catalyst, but this seems completely
this
new
film
to me.
is like that shit happened because Danny was there.
Because Danny was there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
But that is never suggested in the film.
Maybe
so
that's
and unless like everyone who went to the hotel had The Shining, which is very unlikely, has everyone who'd been to the hotel horrifically murdered?
Because the house has The Shining. That's the thing. The house, the Overlook, is specifically there.
And that's the thing. It's like really, you could take away, apart from the bit we said where he like contacts Dick, the groundskeeper. Really, you could take away Danny in the original. You could take away him being telepathic. It really wouldn't change much. It would still be family moves to a house that is some kind of cursed or haunted. Yeah. It's like it wouldn't change much at all. Whereas here, obviously, it's like a massive part of it.
So there's a bit in the film where
Doctor Sleep is this?
Yeah, in Doctor Sleep, where Danny and his friend Billy and Abra, another girl with The Shining, are in the forest and they have a shootout with the cult.
The Travellers.
I thought that was absolutely ridiculous.
I know it was ridiculous.
It was certainly a change of pace, like a very different.
Also, when did Danny become like a marksman shooter?
Yeah, exactly.
Like Billy at least said he did hunt before.
Yeah.
And Danny was just like somehow amazing at shooting guns. And I'm talking about like sniper rifles.
I mean, it does, like that is one of those classic film tropes, though, isn't it? Like where it's just like main character who we have no reason to think has any firearms training, gets a gun and is really good with it.
Yeah.
Like that's not a thing exclusive to this.
No, it's not.
But it is like
it's convenient. Like,
it is very convenient that the guy has 2 sniper rifles.
I like the sudden turn where Snakebite Andy told Billy to kill himself.
Yeah, I thought that was
quite dark.
Yeah,
The rest of the shootout was.
Also, when I was saying a lot of the travellers were like of the gang. What's the gang called? The Knot. The Knot. Yeah. Were expendable. That scene stuck out to me because I didn't know. I don't know who half of them are. They just get killed in that scene. It's
all
like
of them except
the Crow and Rose the Hat. Yeah, it's kind of like.
They like full on take down their numbers.
They really do.
But talking about the cult members, shout out to the giant from Twin Peaks.
Oh yeah.
Doing his stuff where he plays a giant.
Yeah,
and he looks weird because he's a weird looking giant. That's all he can really do.
So the giant's name Grandpa Frick or
something
like that.
Yeah, anyway, Grandpa F.
Grandpa Fuck, Grandpa
John. He was a fucking parasite.
So they mention when he's dying, he's meant to be really old, but they say, you've seen gladiators fight in the Colosseum. Mate, what's that? That's cheesy.
I agree, that was weird. Yeah.
What? Because he's an ancient.
It just felt weird.
Yeah, it just felt like
that's the only thing.
You drank from kings. It's like what?
No, I didn't mind that.
It got a bit cheesy. It got.
I agree, Abel. It's a bit like I don't know.
And that's the only thing in this film that hints at something larger in the same way the first one did. You know.
I didn't like it though in this one.
And then they feed on his steam, don't they? See, that was good. Yeah. Then they were.
I guess if we're going to talk about the rules again, so these things can die, not
very easily.
Yeah. So
their weakness is bullets.
As Rose the Hat said, "When did I promise you immortality?"
Yes.
She doesn't doesn't promise immortality, but
a long life if you eat well.
But a long life
young.
isn't necessarily invincible.
Yes.
But Snakebit, I guess, thought, I'm going to be a mortal vampire.
They appear to die in the same as
bullets.
easily as humans.
Yeah.
Like they aren't
There's
powerful.
frailty. It's
They just
aging.
prolong,
It's
like,
slowing
I guess,
down. Prolong
dying
life. And they can
naturally.
heal. They can heal if they have steam.
Oh, the steam
Yeah,
does.
because you see her,
yeah.
she gets
Her
her hand
hand.
fucked up, rose the hat, and
So they have
then
delayed aging and
she ODs on steam and it gets better. So.
Yeah.
fat clouds.
So what are we saying? So they can die, like Grandpa F. He dies through not having steam.
No, he just
It's like he doesn't have steam for long enough.
He didn't eat well.
And he's like
And he's
1,000 years old.
or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's what she
Not
said.
enough fibre in
Rose
the
is very
steam.
clear about this. That eventually they just die.
And here's an interesting thing for you. I thought of this at the time, and I don't know if it's significant or intentional or what, but they say that, fear and pain makes them give off, like, more steam, better steam.
Yes.
And when the big giant grandpa guy's dying, they say, don't be afraid. They do love him, because if they wanted to, they could make him create more steam by being like, yeah, you're afraid.
But then his sacrifice isn't worth it.
But then they
'cause
feed on him
shit
anyway.
steam.
I mean, you're not going to let the steam go to waste, are you? It's good steam.
It's good steam.
Good steam, mate.
It's going up in the air.
Oh, cracking steam.
Premium steam.
And presumably, because he's old, because he's incredibly old, it's like marinated.
Exactly.
Like really good shit. Like.
Matured steam.
Yes.
They say he hasn't been eating well. It's just going to be bad steam, no?
Yeah, but he's
Yeah,
like.
because what you consume affects the quality of your steam. It's like how Danny's steam tastes of whiskey.
That's true, yeah, because they say the little girl's steam is like flowery.
Yeah.
Oh, Violet.
She
or
likes
something.
flowers.
I bet it tastes like soup of the day or something, like the Daily Mail.
Werther's Originals.
Foster's and Rolly.
I think the Crow says this. He says that like the quality, there's less steam in the world because people are watching Netflix.
And then Netflix
It's-
is killing
say
the
that?
steam. Yeah, he
Well,
does.
he says
He says
speculates.
Netflix,
Yeah,
yeah.
he says too much.
Oh, yeah, he does.
He says like
yeah.
phones
So
internet. Like,
So this generation, too much.
Zoomer
too
steam
much
isn't
screen
as good.
size. Exactly.
You know.
Generation Z steam is low quality.
Yeah.
So the whole
technology is killing
concept-
steam.
Yes. Yeah, the whole concept of steam, I think we've established, is a fairly silly one.
Yeah.
It's fairly loose and just like. Yeah. But at the I don't really hold that against them though, because I find when people like are really intent on like the rules and the logic of like fantasy stuff, dude, it's magic. Why do you have to like have like?
We were saying like when Star Wars introduced like metachlorians, like how he used the
Yeah,
Force,
yeah.
that's like takes away from.
Does
it,
everyone produce steam? Because a guy.
the little boy, the baseball guy, right?
No, but
Was
it's implied he has the Shining.
He has the Shining.
Because
Oh, he has the Shining.
that guy
Yeah.
says
That's how he's
he
good at it.
hits every shot
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he.
But a guy dies in the hospice with Danny. The first guy
Yeah,
Danny
he
comes
lets off
with,
steam.
Does the
comes
cat
out.
have?
He does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, we haven't even mentioned the cat.
So does that
yet,
guy
have
have
we?
the Shining, or was
Or was that just meant to represent-
was that Danny's steam because he sends some thoughts to him and comforts him?
What?
Do you remember
And
the guy's
yeah,
dying?
but then
Yeah.
he.
That's what I mean. Was that steam Danny's Shining?
Never explained.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
that
don't
bit.
know.
Yeah, I'd forgotten, but that.
Going
I
back
like
to
that.
the.
Though. There was definitely something going on in the contrast between the way that the hospice patients die and the way that the not die. Do you notice this? The hospice patients slip away peacefully.
Yeah.
They've accepted their life, and then these greedy soul pain vampires, they writhe in agony and they don't want to go.
Yeah.
So.
And it explains the title because he's like the dude in the hospice who
Dr.
comes to
Sleep,
you when you're
yeah.
dying.
Yeah.
So going back to the plot, I
Wants
guess
to see it.
while this whole weird steam shit's going on, Danny gets a job at a hospice through like his AA meeting, and then he kind of, it's like an old people's home where like people are dying, you know. And then there's this cat which is called, what's it called, Abel?
Azzy, which is short for Azrael,
So
the
angel
god of death,
God of
the
Death, Angel of Death or something like that, which is a nice little fact for you. But the cat like basically knows when the old people are gonna die, and then it will like always go.
He's
So does
got
that cat have Shining?
Yeah,
How does that cat know?
Well, the hotel
animals have it as well.
Surely the cat can have the shine.
And it like goes and like, sits on their bed and like looks at them until they die, and then Ewan McGregor's like has to follow the cat and comforts them. Yeah.
Tell you what, I wouldn't mind seeing that cat before I die. That is a really cute
best
cat.
actor in the film, I reckon. Yeah.
I was worried that I did actually think that like the cultists are gonna find and just like suck the steam out of the cat.
Oh, that would have been sad.
I would have been sad.
Turn her into a furry hat.
And then
so what happens after that? So he's in the town. It's like 8 years later.
the
He's
Abra
working,
shit, I guess.
and then like Abra, who is already shown when she's younger as having this
yeah,
power.
there's a scene. Yeah.
But it's like 8 years later. She's what, like 14 or something. Like that?
So
And
13,
and it's
She communicates with Danny.
So she talks with Danny
because they're in the
via,
same town or something. Or?
Well, okay. Here's something actually I wasn't clear on. Did Abra always live in the same town as Danny, or did she travel to that town?
She travelled to that town.
That's what I thought.
On the bus.
That's what I thought. Yeah, because she got off a bus.
It can't be far away though, because
no, they're in New Hampshire. They're both.
So they're both.
But it does. I guess the title cards do kind of explain that.
Because there was a few different locations. I didn't really keep track. So she's basically speaking to Danny fairly regularly, just through like writing on the chalkboard.
And then the Knot, they kill mention it, baseball guy who has the shine. They get some real good steam from him. Oh, yeah. And then I guess that somehow, because she's like very powerful, her shining is very powerful or whatever, she somehow is aware of that, and she's kind of like freaking out because she's like feeling, I guess, what the kid is.
Well, it's kind of like all the shining people seem to have like a connection.
There's some
like
sort of
they know when something bad is happening.
Yeah, which I guess they explain that in the original, because the janitor is aware Danny has the shine as well.
So that does make so she knows that they've killed this boy, and she does some like research. I
guess they explain that in the original. They can see like the future and the past. So if you have the shining, so that's how she kind of is able to in this film see the group members of the Knot, like what they look like.
And she sees them like after they kill him. She manages to like through that vision find out like the power plant or whatever it is,
someplace
where they're doing it. And she basically goes to the town where Danny's living, says to him, this happened and we can stop it. And then of course that usual like halfway through second act thing happens where the main character's like, nah, I'm not doing this shit, I'm too old for this, and like go away. So she goes away.
Dick the janitor comes back and is like, you owe me a debt, you got to do it.
Yeah, he's like, come on, like help this girl.
I like died for you.
And he's like, fair enough.
Yeah.
And
okay,
fair enough, mate. And he's like,
fair cop.
So then what?
Well, then he like explains this all to Billy, and then Billy's like, all right.
What are we saying?
Well, a bit I want to get to is like how Billy just kind of went along with
Danny.
Very easily
with his antics.
Yeah.
If someone led me to somewhere and dug up a dead body, I would just assume they'd killed that child. Billy has a lot of faith in his friends.
Yeah. So that wasn't really expounded upon.
Everyone believes everything very easily in this film.
Yeah, like the dad of Abra doesn't really question it.
The dad, he goes with it. Yeah. He sees some visions as a stiff drink.
I suppose, they do. I guess, like, she makes him see stuff, so that's fair enough, I guess. So by the time all that's done, we're like at the third act, and it's like...
They have to go to the hotel, like we said, and then...
Well, you skipped the psychic battles, which I liked.
The bit in the supermarket.
I always find it interesting when films and shows have to visualise a psychic battle.
Oh my god, watch Legion.
Legion, you told me I need to watch Legion. And it's like that. I enjoyed... See, that's something that's completely sets it apart from the original. There's very, in my opinion, visually interesting psychic duels between Rose the Hat and Abra. I like the way they visualise the trap she makes. Everyone has this internal world, apparently.
I like that news idea,
Yeah. So
Danny has his boxes, she has like filing cabinet things.
Rose the Hat has this huge library of memories, and I enjoyed the conflict between those two. Yeah.
Although one bit, like that bit where like Abra had like no eyes and the purple hair, I was like, what's that about? But
she likes anime.
Oh, is that it?
Wait, is it?
I didn't even.
But like, how is the no eyes thing?
Scary. Which I liked. It's a hero appearing in a scary form to the villain.
I guess
you don't see that.
Although I don't know,
I liked her. I like Abra as a character actually, because she really enjoys punishing the Knot. Yeah, she wasn't reluctant at all. She said stuff like, "You deserve it."
Yeah, she did say you deserve it.
She really relished Rose's pain.
And I thought that girl was quite a good, decent young actor.
Yeah.
I guess we've pretty much talked about the bit that isn't The Shining now, which is like what we just said.
That's pretty much the first 2/3 thirds, isn't it? And then the third is... It's very noticeable the last third is like, right, this is the Shining trilogy.
It's so rushed.
It's like, we've got to go somewhere, and it's obviously just...
Well, I was thinking, actually...
That's where it falls apart.
I was thinking, actually, if they had spaced it out more and had longer period of time at the Overlook, like the whole
I think it
if that had been longer, do you think that would have been worked better?
Yeah. And also if it had more of a presence in Danny's life. Because Danny, he struggles with a lot of things, and he's traumatised more from just having The Shining, it seems, than specifically the Overlook.
That's true, yeah. Because it's not...
So it's not like the Overlook is something that Danny...
They don't, like, constantly show visions of it or anything.
No.
So he said when his mum died at the age of 20 or something, he saw, like, loads of flies on her face, and he could barely see her eyes. They don't expand on that or anything. I would have loved to see that. That sounds really dark. That's the kind of sequel I wanted to see.
Yeah, the mum, you're not really other than that.
Scene, that would be good.
I thought they were setting that up for like a jump scare where like she'd appear with loads of...
Exactly, in a hotel or something.
At the start, it makes it seem like the mum's going to be a bigger presence in like his life. Not in the film, but in his life maybe. And you don't, apart from that one thing Abel just said, like, and you see her briefly at the end.
So I think, maybe something to make this better. Like I definitely thought it was a decent film. It's not bad, but I think it could have been made quite significantly better by making them get to the Overlook a bit quicker, having more time there, and making it slower, like draw out the like tension of like the horror there, because it felt like very much like suddenly all the ghosts appear, all the ghosts kill Rose the Hat, and then they run out
in a kind of dumb way as well. Like
down.
you think they're like we were saying, I think before we started recording, like how we wished that there was like individual time given to some of the ghosts. Like, if they're gonna go down that route, they're all in one scene.
Gangs all here.
Yeah,
and then
the twins.
The Grady.
Not the
rabbit in the first Shining.
Was he there?
Was the bird
no, he wasn't there. He should have been there.
Yeah,
it's got to be there. It's got to be hidden somewhere. Everyone knows the
An Easter egg. He's there in the background,
sucking someone off.
But had they spaced it out more and had like they see this spirit and this spirit and this ghost, and it's like, okay, fair enough. But it's it felt very rushed.
Yeah, I was saying how I was kind of impressed how they recreated, I guess, the scenery of.
They did a good job of
the
capturing
hotel,
like visual.
but it kind of felt like, for what reason, I don't know. Like, if you
exactly. Because you said it didn't feel earned.
No,
and that's what I mean. If there was if you knew how Danny felt about the Overlook Hotel before they drove.
Yeah, I see your point.
Would have created maybe more sense of dread.
Literally, the only thing you know is like, I've shot that in a box. That's the only like mention
Danny,
of it, really.
Yeah, that's true.
If it was something, it's presented as something Danny maybe needs to confront. He doesn't really or at least I prefer it if that was the case. If it was clearly something Danny had been running away from his whole life, and
it kind of made it seem like it was his.
But instead, it just occurred to him like, oh, I know where we could make a cool last stand. Overlook Hotel.
Yeah, and he's not even that scared when he's in there either.
Exactly. He's
no, that's true. Actually, he doesn't seem very frightened. Yeah.
Whereas it seems like he's afraid of it at the start of the film, but I don't know. Yeah.
So perhaps if they'd done more with his like trauma of being associating it more with
his trauma is literally when he's not an alcoholic, he's suddenly like fine or something.
No, his trauma is he doesn't like having.
I know that, but the way the film does it, like Matthew's saying, there's not enough of, and you were saying as well, not enough of how the hotel affected him.
Yeah. I would have liked it.
Because like having seen it more, the thing is, everybody knows it's going to end there if you've seen the trailer. They know that. But it would have been still more intense if they'd like through the whole thing they keep kind of showing it. And it's like, this is going to be bad. He's going to have to go back.
That would have
made it more.
Made him seem more reluctant about going back.
And I think it would have made it more tense when he does find it.
Yeah.
But it's like
he just sort of sees it as a useful tool.
Yeah.
And also understands exactly what it was.
Yeah.
He knows that's a place that eats people with The Shining.
Yeah.
Potentially.
The tension of this film, I think, is really bad.
Well, it's an unsuccessful horror film, I would say.
It's not very scary.
It's not scary. There's not much of a tension.
The only thing, like,
I would like if we had more of the not stalking potential victims and Abra instead of just sort of hanging out.
There's a lot of hanging out. Like hanging out, like, where's my steam, man? I need my steam.
Yeah, it's like if you think about that, think about the original Halloween. A lot of the film is Michael Myers stalking his victims and keeping an eye on them, and he's this constant present until he puts his plan into motion. If they're not, they're more like that. Like they kept an eye on Abra and they kept an eye on other potential victims, and they were sort of just in the looming around.
Because they were like aware of Abra, but they kept just ignoring her for quite a while. They're just hanging about, like you said, and then they just suddenly decide to go after her.
Yeah.
After quite a long time. If we'd seen more of what they were actually doing, I guess it might have been better. But going back to the tension thing, like I think we got to compare this to the original. Like the original is like one of the most tense horrors out there, and like it does it so well.
Yeah.
Just the way Kubrick filmed it.
Yeah.
A lot of techniques. Like
I think this film overused the heartbeat thing as well. Like in every single scene that was trying to build tension, there was a.
Like
and it just wasn't. It didn't end in any sort of horrific thing. It was just, and so by the end, it was like, okay, another heartbeat, another. Oh yeah, that's happened.
The problems I had with it easier to overlook had it been scarier, because at the end of the day, it's a horror movie, and it just wasn't that scary.
Or if they moved away from horror even more, it might
possibly
like pick a direction kind of.
Yeah, because if they played up even more of the dark fantasy thriller aspect of the psychic duels and the knots, and it was more of just its own entity, I would have liked that more than going back to the iconic horror at the end.
Yeah.
The Shining, if you see what I mean.
The thing about the original Shining is like it's one of those films where it's just so perfectly done. Like the atmosphere of the hotel is like that is the film.
Yeah.
The way the technique Stanley Kubrick used, like I think it might be the first film with this. It was very influential, like using Steadicam shots of
and it adds
displaying
a lot to the tension.
Just that whole hotel, like kind of walking around it, and you see
following Danny on his tricycle.
Yeah, and you get like a very in-depth look at the layout of it, and
see that was a really good way of building tension, because when Danny was riding on his tricycle, there was no music or anything. There was just the sound of him coming off the carpet onto the wooden floor and then back onto the carpet. See, there should have been stuff like that in it.
But the thing is, that would have just been repeating the original.
I kind of think
true.
There shouldn't have been stuff,
but at least it worked in the original.
That is the point, that that's what the original set out to do, and it did it very well.
Yeah.
And I always like kind of films or games even where like the tension is the setting, or you know, tension is built throughout the setting. Whereas in Doctor Sleep, it wasn't doing that for most of the film, but then it tried to do it at the end and tried to be The Shining.
It's like it does almost feel like it changes not genres, but it becomes a very different type of film.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's
because the most of the films set out in the open, and which is very different to The Shining, and it could be doing that well, and then it.
I mean, I didn't want it. Yeah, that's the thing. Like I didn't expect it or want it to be as good as The Shining, but I would have liked it to be just more of a horror. I think I would have liked, because it wasn't particularly tense. Like kind of saw the few scares that there were, you saw coming. You knew when they were going to happen, and it like made you made you jump for a second. Like, oh. But that was it. Like it wasn't like that. It wasn't like a disturbing.
I guess if we're going to talk about Mike Flanagan as well, like he is capable of doing good horror, because Haunting of Hill House is a really good horror series.
It's interesting actually.
A really tight series.
Yeah, because Haunting of Hill House in a similar way to the
Shining,
of how it's really tense, and it's just kind of this slow, like a lot of it are these shots of like this house and this slow kind of thing of like
Hill House is like Outlook Hotel.
And it's very like part of the character.
So I guess I can see why he would have maybe wanted to do the sequel and why they would have picked him based on that.
But from his past work, it's a little disappointing.
Yeah,
you know, we've seen like him do some properly good things.
I don't think it's his fault necessarily.
I mean, he did a decent job with what.
Yeah, he did. Well, actually, he did write the screenplay, so maybe he is slightly more to blame than I just said. But
but I mean,
it's based on
he's adapting
Stephen
a novel,
King's
though, isn't he?
books,
So there's only so much he can do. Perhaps it's one of those things that it's like as good as it could have been, like if just while staying faithful, like
because no one asked for a sequel to The Shining.
Perhaps it was like quite accurate to the book, but it's just not that interesting.
It's not one of those films anyone asked for, is it? It's just kind of.
But the book, I haven't read the book, but in a book you can't have those same very heavy parallels. Like the equivalent would be Stephen King reusing passages from The Shining and changing certain
different
words.
medium, I guess. Yeah.
So even if I have no idea what happens in the book, even if the ending's exactly the same and Danny goes back to the Overlook Hotel,
I've heard
you can't
in the
have
book the Overlook isn't around anymore in Doctor Sleep.
Oh really?
That's a major change.
Well, there we go. Then I might like the book more because I would probably prefer this film without the Overlook Hotel.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then
like find their own setting for the climax, maybe.
Yeah.
Like.
What do you mean the Overlook isn't?
In the book of The Shining and Doctor Sleep, the Overlook is burned down at the end of.
Not in the book of The Shining.
Yeah.
I thought it was.
Oh, it is in the book.
It gets burned down at the end. So there is no hotel by the time of Doctor Sleep.
Well, there we go. Well, I'm gonna have to read them now. I like Stephen King. I've read those ones, but that's got me curious because that's to me.
But
at
the same time, I can understand why they put the hotel in because it's such a big part.
Yeah, well, I was trying to sequel
they want to connect.
They just didn't expand upon the reasoning. There was a reasoning, but it was pretty shit. It was just
There's a very logical reason. It was just it was a useful tool. The house is a useful tool.
It was but it could have been used better. Like the way they put the hotel in there could have been more interesting.
Like you had the blood coming out the lift. I didn't like that because it was
just showing the same shot.
I didn't. Whenever they just showed the same shot, I was like
that kind of felt like it was like a checklist of like, well, we need to show
the whole
bit
felt like a checklist.
What do the fans want?
Yeah, we need to show the blood. We need to show the twins. They need to
start. The film has like Danny. They recreated him just going on his little tricycle thing. They just reshot that again. I know there's a slightly different thing where he looks in the door. But
that little bit isn't in The Shining, is it? Where the woman.
No, but they lit. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the blood itself is, it just felt like a checklist, like you say.
Yeah.
Of things that are in The Shining.
Because you could see that. You could see that coming for like the 20 seconds.
But the maze, I like the maze though because that's part of the psychic battle thing.
The maze bit was alright.
Because it wasn't just the maze; it was a huge.
Alright, it's
maze.
better than the blood
bit. That's
that,
Danny's version of his mind palace, vaults, which is the maze.
But at the same time, it did feel a bit like, well, we've already seen a character get chased through a snowy maze. Can't you do something more original? Like, I get that it's in his head and it's but it felt like another thing that was like, well, like with him chasing Abra with the axe, it's like, well, you're just doing the same thing again. Why wouldn't I just watch The Shining if I wanted to see that,
Yeah, having just watched The Shining, literally the whole end was like The Shining is just, I'd rather be watching that.
But, having said that, we are talking a lot of... I would say it's still a decent movie.
It's not bad.
Most of it is.
Yeah.
I would say people who are into that sort of movie I'd enjoy it still. I'd recommend people...
What sort of movie?
It's trying to market itself as a full-on horror like The Shining.
But it's not really.
Yeah.
It's like it's two different things, kind of.
Yeah.
But I touched on this a bit earlier. Not only is it not very scary, but there's not the characters to make up for it. Like even Danny's
kind of
let down by. I'd hope we'd have a bit more depth.
They could have maybe been more like, he's going to be like an alcoholic and that's his demons and stuff like that. Use that to more effect as to like, maybe show like a manifestation of his like darkness and his addiction and stuff. But they really only cover that briefly. It's like, he's like troubled and he's an alcoholic.
He had more of a personality when he was an alcoholic. There wasn't a lot.
His personality is basically just like guy who suffered trauma and is now clean. Like that. There's not masses to go on there.
Yeah, it's a very average.
I would say it's like it's okay.
Yeah.
I liked most of the story, and then it really falls off for me at the hotel.
I wouldn't give it another watch.
It's too long.
It's too long
to have another watch. It's
boring and shit.
and then you get to the end, you're like, I'd rather be watching the original.
I don't think
5 out of 5, shit and boring.
I don't think I'd get much out of it.
It's interesting actually, because I always assumed, like, watching it, I was like, alright, come on, let's get to the like spooky stuff at the end. I was thinking that. But now, upon reflection, it's like actually, like Ben said, the last kind of third was kind of the weak. It was more interesting for the rest of the film.
Yeah,
but while watching, I was like, come on, give us the horror, give us...
I'm a massive scaredy cat when it comes to horrors, and even I managed to watch all of it without putting my hand in front of my face.
Yeah.
Which is what I wanted.
Perhaps that's the curse, though, of being like associated with a classic, though.
Yeah,
like,
maybe.
I don't think it is, because even on its own...
You don't think on its own it might have been thought of as like a classic, but you think on its own it might not have gotten... We might have been a bit less harsh on it, maybe?
No, because the bit that I'm harsh on is the bit that's a series of callbacks to The Shining.
Yeah,
no, I think so. It's impossible to judge.
If it had been a different film without any aspect from The Shining, and it was these kind of the Knot crew, and then there was a character similar to Danny, then maybe it would have been a lot better.
But then we probably...
I'd like it more, but it's...
Yeah.
That's what I mean. You can't judge that because the whole ending is dependent on The Shining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird one, isn't it?
It's true. Yeah.
So that's why, and it's always if a film has a bad ending, that's much worse than a bad beginning.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Because it's like, because I genuinely liked most of it. I was invested in it, and then by the end I was like, oh no.
You were saying just before that how like Danny, or maybe it was you, Ben, wasn't that interested in a character, but like Jack Torrance is like a very interesting character in the original Shining.
Yeah.
Just seeing his slow descent into madness is like. I there's something interesting about him, so I kind of care about him. Whereas Danny in this was like, it
would have been good if
he's Ewan McGregor, you know.
Maybe it would have been good if we'd had the opposite.
Yeah.
Instead of the 8 years jump, if we'd had Danny's slow recovery.
I think that would have been good. Yeah,
that would have been good.
Well, he's a violent...
And his twitchy finger as well. I wanted to see his twitchy finger.
Yeah, because
Tony,
we went from Danny being a violent...
It's kind of like another plot-wise checklist thing of like, now he's sober and fine.
Yeah.
And his life's great, kind of.
Yeah, and it happened, it's like a sudden cut, isn't it?
Yeah.
From like, oh, he's an addict 8 years later.
It would have been good to see more of a struggle with Danny. There's like one scene where he almost relapses, but then it's
like, I knew he wasn't going to relapse.
He's a bit too much of a straightforward hero, maybe. He's
and
vanilla.
as Matthew said, like when he like
he
denies
is.
like the hero's journey at one point, and then he's
it has a bit of a cliche of, you don't want any part of this, kid. You're better off never thinking of this again. Like, that's such a kind of...
I noticed
like
that
every film ever.
Yeah.
And then like halfway through, like half an hour later, the mentor figure's like, no, I changed my mind, I gotta do it, and he runs to save the,
One interesting weird thing, like his chalkboard.
Yeah.
How did no one just like walk in there and notice this like murder and like all this weird shit on it?
I mean, it is his place.
I think wasn't the murder more like forced into it?
It looked like it was cracked.
Yeah, true.
So even if
I was the landlady there,
off,
and I walked
like,
in there, I might be like, what's
there'd still be some crack in the wall.
But I think that probably brings us to an end. Unless anyone has any last thoughts.
Really?
I liked... they tortured a kid. It's pretty bold.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of
tortured a
child.
More stuff like that would have been
good.
That
was pretty dark.
Absolutely. Really play up the sinister
That was maybe
child abduction and mutilation.
The one slightly tense bit of the film, maybe.
Yeah, it's a disturbing bit, torturing a child. But other than that, it's fairly tame.
Yeah. So I guess...
Yeah.
So maybe more...
Definitely say...
More child tortures.
I definitely say it's probably not worth seeing in the cinema.
If you can see it cheap. Like, I don't feel bad that I paid.
Watch it on Netflix.
I don't feel bad that I spent like a couple of hours. I don't know.
It's more of a stocking filler you won't watch. It'll just collect dust on your shelf.
True.
That's like I said. I have been harsh on it because it's like I said, a film with a bad ending leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Give it a watch. I think that's some competent. It was very nicely directed, visually good, psychic duels, which you wouldn't expect from a Shining sequel.
Yeah, true. Abel, any last thoughts? Or?
Oh, no.
Right, yeah.
I'm guessing you would not recommend going.
No, I wouldn't recommend it. But,
like
I've just got my own thoughts in it. If you want your own, you gotta go watch it.
Guess so.
Bear in mind, Abel doesn't like Green Room, so.
Yeah, I don't know.
His opinions
or John Wick.
Or John Wick. So take his opinions with a grain of salt.
John Wick, but Green Room's great. But anyway.
Well, I don't like Leon, so what do you think of that, Abel?
That's fine. Everyone's gonna have an opinion.
Well, if there's
amazing.
if there's like a outcry about Abel being on again because of that, then
yeah,
you're gonna get cancelled.
But I'm sure Abel will be back on some point.
Yeah, hopefully.
Maybe one, maybe a regular. Who
Christmas special.
Christmas round the fireplace with Abel, maybe. Anyway, we're gonna go. You've been listening to Film Focus Podcast, and we'll be back again talking about some film. So take it easy.